Ambassador Kethavar of the Galactic Concordat, stood before the Emergency Council, his crystalline features fractured with stress lines that had never appeared in his 3-century lifespan. The holographic displays around the chamber painted a picture of devastation that defied comprehension. "The Devourers have consumed 17 star systems in the past cycle," he announced, his voice harmonizing in frequencies that conveyed absolute despair. "Our greatest fleets, our most advanced technologies, our ancient weapons of mass destruction, nothing slows their advance." Around the circular chamber, representatives of 43 species sat in stunned silence. The Zephyrians' energy forms flickered weakly. The mighty Corvan warriors, beings who had never known defeat, stared at their massive claws with empty eyes. Even the hyper-intelligent Nexari, whose computational minds could process quantum equations in nanoseconds, sat motionless as their probability matrices showed only extinction. "There is one option remaining," whispered Elder Thossanet, the eldest being in known space. Her ancient voice carried across the chamber like wind through dead leaves. "The Terrans." A collective shudder rippled through the assembly. The humans. Those bizarre illogical creatures from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. They had been discovered barely 2 centuries ago, a young species that had somehow survived on a death world that should have killed them 1,000,000 times over. The humans? Kethavar's crystalline form actually cracked. They possess no advanced technology. Their weapons are primitive projectile systems. Their ships move slower than our civilian transports. They die from exposure to radiation levels that we consider therapeutic. Yet, Elder Thossanet continued, they are the only species in recorded history to refuse surrender. Every simulation, every psychological profile, every behavioral analysis we have conducted reaches the same impossible conclusion. Humans do not comprehend defeat. Commander Vextari of the Corvan Empire leaned forward, his scarred carapace gleaming under the chamber's lights. "I have studied their military history. They have lost battles, wars, entire civilizations. How can you claim they do not know defeat?" The holographic display shifted, showing archived footage from Earth's history. Images of humans standing against impossible odds flashed across the screen. A handful of warriors holding a narrow pass against thousands, pilots ramming their aircraft into enemy ships, soldiers continuing to fight with mortal wounds that would have killed any other species instantly. "They lose," Elder Thossanet explained, "but they do not accept loss. When their bodies fail, they find ways to continue. When their weapons break, they use their bare hands. When their hands fail, they use their teeth. When facing extinction, they somehow become more dangerous." The Nexari representative Quinn 773 finally spoke, its mechanical voice cutting through the chamber's acoustics. "This is illogical. The humans have been evaluated. They are physically inferior to most species. Their lifespans are brief. Their technology is elementary. Statistical analysis indicates..." "Statistical analysis," interrupted Dr. Sarah Chen. "The human ambassador, who had remained silent until now, doesn't account for human stubbornness." Every eye in the chamber turned to the small figure in the corner. Dr. Chen was unremarkable by galactic standards. Short, frail, with primitive eyes that contained no cybernetic enhancements. Yet something in her expression made beings who had conquered star systems feel suddenly uncertain. "You're asking us to fight the Devourers," she said, standing slowly. "Beings that have consumed civilizations that could manipulate matter at the quantum level. Entities that have destroyed fleets capable of cracking planets. You want us to fight them with what? Chemical propulsion and kinetic weapons?" Kethavar's stress fractures deepened. "Dr. Chen, we understand the impossibility of what we ask. But our projections show complete galactic extinction within 50 cycles. You are our last hope because you are the only species that might try anyway." Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, an expression that somehow made every advanced being in the chamber feel primitive. "You're right about one thing," she said. "We probably can't win. The Devourers are more advanced, more powerful, and they've had millions of years to perfect their consumption techniques." She paused, her smile growing wider. "But you made one critical error in your analysis." "What error?" Elder Thossanet asked. "You assumed we need to win to destroy them." The chamber fell silent. Dr. Chen activated her primitive communication device. "Admiral Harrison?" "Yes, it's Chen. The galaxy officially just asked humanity to save them from an unstoppable cosmic horror." She paused, listening. No, I'm not joking. Yes, they specifically mentioned we might all die. Another pause. Admiral, your laughter is terrifying our hosts. She closed the communication and turned back to the assembly. Admiral Harrison wants you to know that humanity accepts your request. He also wants you to know that we've been preparing for this conversation since first contact. We've been studying the Devourer threat for decades, developing what we call desperation protocols. What are desperation protocols? Quinn 773 inquired. Dr. Chen's expression grew serious. They're strategies that only work if you're willing to sacrifice everything. Most species develop them but never implement them because the cost is too high. Humans are unique because we consider any cost acceptable, if the alternative is extinction. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed human fleet movements, ships pulling back from the outer colonies, consolidating around specific star systems. We're not going to fight the Devourers conventionally. We're going to turn our own sun into a weapon. We're going to weaponize our gravity wells. We're going to convert our agricultural worlds into biological warfare laboratories. We're going to do things that should be impossible because we've never learned the difference between impossible and expensive. Commander Vextari leaned back in amazement. You would destroy your own worlds to stop them? Commander, Dr. Chen replied. We're the species that fought wars with weapons that could end our civilization just to prove a point. We're the species that went to space using controlled explosions. We're the species that responds to danger by making ourselves more dangerous. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from across the galaxy. You called us your last hope because we're the only species that doesn't know when to quit. You're right. But you misunderstood what that means. We're not going to save the galaxy despite being human. We're going to save it because we're human, because sometimes the universe needs a species too stubborn to accept destiny. As Dr. Chen left the chamber, Elder Thosnet turned to Kethvar. Do you think they can actually succeed? Kethvar watched the human disappear down the corridor. I think we just unleashed something that the Devourers have never encountered before. A species that fights harder when losing is certain. In the darkness between stars, something ancient and hungry felt a tremor of uncertainty for the first time in eons. Across human space, lights began appearing in patterns that had never been seen before. The illumination of a species that had decided to make the impossible merely improbable. The galaxy held its breath as humanity prepared to do what it did best, prove that destiny was just another word for challenge.